If you're a wrestler, you keep your eyes on the prize. Sure, sometimes you wrestle out of love, out of hatred, because that man is much shorter than you and you are really, really angry about it, with your kind of reverse Napoleon complex. But in most promotions around the world, all of the emotion in wrestling, all of that storytelling is on the way to and in service of a shot at some sort of championship belt. Big Gold, Winged Eagle, Intercontinental El Clasico. These are the top prizes for the different divisions, and you can see why wrestlers want these, to signify that they are on top of their game. It's harder to imagine why they want the godforsaken Spinner one or the Divas f***ing Butterfly one, but that's where the acting comes in. She's really crying because it's hideous. Now, over the years, many belts and designs have come to represent the different championships in just WWE alone. But how do they get commissioned and made? Why do the designs change? And why does wrestling even use belts in the first place? I'm Laurie, hailing from partsFUNknown, and this is Championship Belts Explained. Now, before we crack on, please do consider giving this channel a subscribe. We know a lot of you guys regularly watch our content, but a lot of you aren't actually subscribed, and YouTube it really loves it when people who watch your videos are also subbed. So help us beat the big corporate YouTube monster and sub to the channel. I think that's how anarchy works. Anarchy. So, professional wrestling and its championship belts are designed to ape sports like boxing or MMA, and that means you can market the thing as this title match combat, which brings with it this sort of baked-in sporting story that the person who holds the belt is the best at wrestling in the world, and likely also making the most money. Now, due to wrestling's predetermined nature, we know that not to be true. Instead, storylines, viewership, and gate tend to determine who the champions are at any one point. And there are things that you just don't see in other combat sports, like the Money in the Bank briefcase, which means that just about anyone can be a champion with a shock cash-in. It's your kind of quick fix injection of PR and interest in an effort to boost ratings. Though I think that the story still holds water, that if you hold the belt, you become the person to beat, whether that reign lasts a few short minutes or 2,803 days. It's just this accepted part of the wrestling legend that you compete for title belts. And they can mean all sorts of things. They can denote the best person in a certain weight class, like the Cruiserweight Championship. Or it could be a regional thing, like the US and the Intercontinental, which are really about building up-and-coming talent. Or they can be about roll-ups and crap jokes, like the 24/7 title. But even those gimmick titles, like the Hardcore title, at least revolved around a certain... discipline is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Like stabbing each other is a skill. They're basically props and tools for storytelling, and as we saw at WrestleMania this year, they add instant gravitas to a match. But why belts? Like, most other sports have a cup or a trophy or medals for their respective champions. It's just boxing, MMA, and pro wrestling that have their heart set on belts. So let's rewind a bit. All the way back to 1810, where Bristolian boxer Tom Cribb fought and defeated American former slave Tom Molyneux in a 35-round bout at Thistleton Gap. Thistleton Gap. I'm British, and that place sounds like something out of a Fable game, even to me. Now, according to the story, this crowned Cribb as the world champion, and he was awarded the first ever title belt by King George III himself. Now, that belt was made out of lion skin, decorated with silver claws, and was designed to remind them of his love. Da 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 da, ya di da di da da da. Now, obviously, that is just fucking mental, and likely didn't set the precedent for title belts, otherwise we would be out of lions, because British colonialists didn't exactly do things by halves. Now, the assumption is that belts became the common award for boxing sometime during the 1820s, and may have been an allusion to a tradition of boxers bringing coloured cloths and flags to tie to the ring posts in their corner ahead of their bouts, or that they would wear these kind of coloured sashes tied around their waist. Then, the winner might claim the other person's colours after a fight and wear them like a belt. So belts, sans lion skin, became the de facto prize for boxers, and then when professional wrestling emerged as a genuine competitive sport throughout the late 19th century and early 20th century, it adopted the tropes of boxing, including the belts. The first recognized wrestling title was actually created in 1905, with George Hackenschmidt being the first man to hold the World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship, a title that had a convoluted 51-year history, with many promotions laying claim to it before it was actually eventually folded into the legacy of the NWA World's Heavyweight title, which can then be traced all the way through to the current WWE Championship, with a kind of change to WCW and that being unified into the Undisputed title all that time ago. Basically, belt history is incredibly messy, and the same belt gets used loads of times in all that as different belts. The big gold belt, that beautiful bastard, started life as the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship in 1986, became the WCW Championship in 1991, had a very brief stint as the real World's Heavyweight Championship after a $25,000 dispute between Ric Flair and WCW Vice President Jim Herd, was unified into the undisputed WWF Championship, brought back as the World Heavyweight title in 2003, and then unified again into the WWE Championship. Little side note here, because the history of the World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship that Hackenschmidt won kind of straddles the line between shoot wrestling and the modern kayfabe format, I thought this was quite interesting. Because the exact moment that wrestling crossed the line from legit competition to fabricated fight is sort of lost in the murk of history. But one account from Bret the Hitman Hart in his book Hitman: My Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling said that he had a long and fascinating talk with Lou Thesz in '81, and he said a title was a huge part of the process. He said Thesz told him the business was a total shoot until about 1925, at a time when Jack Dempsey was knocking everyone out in a couple of rounds and Babe Ruth was smashing the home run record in baseball. The average world title wrestling match often lasted 5 or 6 hours and ended in a stalemate. Ed Strangler Lewis, Thesz's mentor, was impossible to beat, so he eventually worked a title loss just to pump some new blood into the business and make a nice payoff, and that was when it had all changed. From there you can see how the title change would become the kind of cherry on the top of wrestling's best told stories and begin to signal the passing of the torch from one star to another, which admittedly was a far rarer occurrence before the TV era. Stars like Bruno Sammartino dominated the 60s with a 7-year reign as the WWF World Heavyweight Champion, but he held multiple versions of the belt during that time. Then in the 80s, the WWF title changed hands only 8 times, whereas the modern WWE Championship has had over 40 separate runs since 2010. There have been 3 different champions this year, and these are all technically the same title lineage, by the way. And there's an argument to be made that hot-shotting the belt around between different competitors can damage the reputation of the belt and of the champions themselves, but huge long title runs like Bruno's would also make a stagnant, stale product in the modern era, and it would make the company rely too heavily on just one star, and considering the propensity for injuries, that's not a good thing. There's also WWE's big belief that big stories need the belts for that added bit of flavour, kind of like The Fiend winning the Universal title. Now he was someone with actual ulterior motives for wrestling matches, but to give it that main event razzle-dazzle, they included the title, which then backs WWE into the booking corner at Hell in a Cell because they didn't actually want Seth to drop the title. They do a do-over where The Fiend actually wins, and then it eventually leads to the loss to Goldberg and the real start of the downward descent for Bray's new gimmick. Sometimes a title can be a curse. Because while championship belts can lift a storyline, they can also be a weight around its waist, dragging it down. Even just logistically. Ultimo Dragon once held and defended 10 titles simultaneously. His diary must have been crazy. Then you got the problems of champions being injured, or in the case of 2020, just trapped overseas because of lockdown. You end up with people being stripped of the titles, or interim champions being crowned like Santos Escobar. For better or for worse, a belt puts the focus on one particular star, and if they can't compete, that is a major spanner in the works of a promotion. So with all the prestige and pomp that goes into the presentation of wrestling titles, especially those in WWE, and the sheer weight afforded them in storyline, I was imagining the creation of them to be this big corporate enterprise. like assembly lines, machinery. Instead, a lot of it is just lone craftsmen in workshops. Guys like Dave Milliken, a lifelong wrestling fan who started making belts out of cardboard when he was a kid and now crafts belts seen by millions of people on WWE TV from his garage.
I make belts for the biggest companies and collectors all over the world. Of course, my biggest customer is WWE. Most of the belts on WWE television are mine, from the WWE title, the World Heavyweight Championship Big Gold Belt, the Intercontinental title, the tag team titles.
Dave was trained in the art of belt production by Reggie Parks, a former wrestler who became a belt maker after giving up life inside the squared circle. It was Reggie who crafted the Winged Eagle WWF Championship used from 1988 to 98 and most of the iconic Hulkamania era belts from 1984 onwards. The rest were leftover designs from another retired wrestler, Nikita Molkovich. More recently, WWE looked to Orange County Choppers to fabricate a redesign of the WWE Championship that Dave Milliken originally made in 2014 to coincide with a company-wide rebranding, but a lot of the look carved quite closely to what Dave had created. I found this excellent breakdown of how boxing belts are made from partsFUNknown, the company founded by the grandson of Ardash Sahagian, who is the godfather of the modern boxing belt, who revolutionized the design by turning the flat 2D metal designs into 3D reliefs, the same sort of designs that are used in modern wrestling belts. So the belts are entirely handcrafted, and when commissioned, a sketch is prepared for each metal piece of the design, and a clay, plaster and metal model is created with a rubber mold used to cast the final piece of metal, which is then refined with files, chisels and automated tools. Orange County Choppers actually used a precise waterjet cutting machine to blast their faceplate into shape. They then used a rolling machine to curve it so it would conform to the body of the wrestler when placed on the belt. However the pieces are being shaped, once they're done, they're polished on a buffing wheel to then be plated with either gold or rhodium and then electroplated with copper, nickel and 18 karat gold. Or you can do silver. For embellishments, crystals are then placed into moulded cavities, which is something you can see on the WWE Championship. In boxing, this can also be diamonds and rubies at the behest of the champion, which is madness, but I don't think wrestling actually bothers with that, because it's pretend. The boxing straps are made of high-grade bonded leather measured out and then cut out with a knife. They are then adhered to more leather or high-grade vinyl and stitched with black spandex. Basically, it's a lot of work, and small companies like Orange County Choppers are doing it, and Dave Milliken is doing a lot of it. And for each belt design, whoever's crafting it would actually have to create multiple belts, as WWE will give champions a belt to take with them on the road and to signings and appearances and that sort of thing, but they need to keep a pristine HD belt for TV. Speaking of HD belts, Milliken said that HD belts take their share of abuse, and when a new one is made or one is refurbished, the previous one usually drops down to being what is used on the road. Hence why you sometimes spot those little mix-ups where the belts have the wrong plates on TV when the HD version hasn't actually been shipped across. In recent years, we've seen the United States Championship and Intercontinental Championship change design. NXT's Championship got bigger. The Fiend got a custom Universal title. The IWGP World Heavyweight Championship amalgamated the heavyweight and Intercontinental title belts into this rather contentious design. AEW had a couple of stabs at the TNT Championship before retiring the red version in honour of the late Brody Lee. But beyond tragedy, the creation of new divisions or the unification of old ones, belts likely change to signal the start of a new era. Whether that's a full rebrand or not. Like, look at the spinner belt. That was basically the PG era given form. It was a toy. Or maybe belts are a way of sweeping past mistakes under the rug, or just a way of refreshing a championship run without actually changing the champion. They are also a very good excuse to sell merchandise, because with new belts, that means new replicas, new artwork, new version of all the champion toys. It all gets to change, and you gotta sell it again. Money, 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 money. And people want to buy them because belts are meaningful. They represent wrestling working at its best. The right person holding the right belt is either a confirmation of something that fans have wanted to see for ages, or it's the first step on an exciting new run, or it is a much needed refresh for an entire division. And even when the belt isn't on somebody you like, there's always that hope that someone comes along and rescues that beautiful belt and brings it back to the light. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this dive into how title belts are made and where they come from. Please do like, subscribe, and comment, and share this video around if you really liked it, as that would help us out immensely. And if you are in the mood for more explained, why not watch this one about luchador masks, or you can check out Adam's latest fantasy booking of John Cena's final run. Also, thanks to our lovely patrons who are scrolling on the screen right now. Details of that in the description. See you next time. Jam that jam.